Hello, and a very warm welcome to one and all present here. In today's session of InsurTech Leadership Talk series, we are going to discuss a very important topic in the insurance industry, which is insurance distribution in disruptive digital ecosystem, for which we are going to first know about the insurance distribution evolved, how insurance distribution evolved. Insurance has been in India for around 200 years. The main source of selling has always been through agents and brokers. 10 years back, everything was done manually by these agents and brokers. Then bancassurance started becoming one of the important distribution channels. And now, with the increasing use of technology, many web aggregators have come up, and the shift towards technology is visible, though the shift is gradual, but it's significant. Digital transformation has forced companies to rethink their source of revenue and efficiency. It forces them to rethink the organization model, and slowly but steadily, this digital disruption is coming to the insurance industry in India. The global pandemic has increased the efficiency. The just a second, sir. I'm not able to. The global pandemic has given this a major push as a new web aggregator like PhonePe give the customers a lot of comfort and are easing their process of buying insurance by making it a lot more simple and convenient. Today we are here to know in depth about the impact of digitalization on the distribution of insurance. I am delighted to welcome Mr. Mangesh, co-founder and executive director, C2L Biz Solution, to our InsurTech Leadership Talk series. Mr. Mangesh is a textile engineer. He has also completed his MMS marketing from University of Mumbai and worked in clothing and fashion industry for quite a bit before starting his career in insurance industry. And in 2008, he ventured out with his own company, which is C2L Biz Solutions. Sir, now I would like to give you the stage. Thank you.
Yeah, hello. Thanks, Saksham, for introducing me. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, BIMTech. Thank you, India InsurTech Association, for inviting me for this leadership series talk. And let me uh, thank you all, the InMOS team as well, for organizing an interesting topic on this. To start, let me set the context. I would like this session to be as much interactive as possible, but as Sir Pandit suggested, I start with a brief introduction and set the context on this topic. And most of this, we are not like a research or a consulting organization, more on either on strategy side, but our focus of our learning of all this is an actual work that we have done in the area of insurance transformations, whether it is in operations area, whether it is in the area of technology that we drive, where we come from. But I'll not touch upon, because transformation word is very broad. It goes into the area of the domain of strategy, as well as goes into the domain of even the people aspect. But I'll not touch those right now, because you are but we can't do justice in the short time. So I'll focus more on these aspects that we have learned over the 2+ decades of our experience in this industry, and I'll share some of our insights onto that. So, are you able to see the next slide? Just before I deep dive into any of the topic, I'll just set the context.
Yes,
Are you
sir.
able to see
Visible.
that? Yeah,
Yes, sir.
you're seeing the agenda slide? Yeah. Okay. So, let me, the point why this topic came up in our thought is primarily because whenever we used to interact with a lot of insurers, and every time we used to find out that most insurers had taken some or the other initiative that we would talk about from a technology standpoint. We talk about today's context, we talk about AI/ML, we talk about analytics, big data, we talk about blockchain. Every technology that we talk, most insurers would have done something or the other in those space. And so we should always wonder that and then when we used to go into some detailed discussion, we used to understand that, we used to ask them, okay, how has it helped you in terms of your improving your time to market to launch a product? How has it improved to help you to your time to market to adapt your process, where you take today's context of a digital buy online, and that digital buy online, is your customer able to get more options of products? Are you able to launch product faster? Are they able to, are you able to adapt a process for a term product versus an investment linked product? And we used to find that that would take them months together to even launch a new product. Then we used to go even to the areas of sales enablement for the huge tied agencies or the brokers that they would have. That, okay, has your digital helped you to launch new areas or new products for their your agents, your advisors? Are they truly behaving like an advisor, or they are still selling like an agent who is pushing a particular product which is comfortable at? And most of the times, invariably, it would land up that it is just the same product and same process, and then time required to launch would always remain very large. Same thing would extend further, that it would be most of these tools that even today's digital, we find that uh, they are a replica of the earlier generation paper process using the new tools. But that is not what is transformation, isn't it? Transformation is not just about doing the whole activity which you used to do in a paper in a digital form. Transformation means you are able to do and use it intelligently to do an activity so that it changes the life of the experience of the customer, the life of the agent to sell, and that is what should be a transformation. Take for example, whether if are the agents behaving more like an advisors today, or are they still peddling products? Are the agents able to give a decisions or address the customer sales objections by giving a target fund the valuation also? Are they able to do all the scenarios, or are they? So when we used to ask this, we used to find that that has not changed much. Or even, are they able to give the underwriting decisions on the field? And most of the time, invariably, it will find that yes, we are able to give some small standard case decisions when it is a clean case. But when it is comes to a real exceptions, we are not able to give decisions. We are able to add a rate up. No, it has to, I have to collect certain documents, and it had to go to the back end in the central processing center and come. So with this kind of a situation, always intrigued us that what is it a true transformation, or is it more like a technical initiatives that insurers are embarking? And that's what led to this packaging of this presentation. And I'll come to the specific. Yes, what is the, let's look at it in the today's world, let not get into too much in the history. And what is the today's context of the insurance industry? And because we are in a cusp of a certain significant changes that are happening in the insurance. So I use the Porter model just to structure the whole thought process of the insurance industry's current context. And if you look at what is the competition landscape, we operate in all these markets in Asia, India, as well as, and so if you look at it, that today the boundaries are very blurred. The competition is not for the insurer, is not from the next insurer, but also from even an aggregator like a Policy Bazaar, Policy X, or even somebody who is packaging and white labeling a particular product like a Gram Karwar, or it is a point of sale brokers that are emerging with Renew Buy, Turtlemint, Cowfox, and all. So the boundaries, because ultimately everybody is running for the same wallet share, and this same thing covers in various markets across the region that we see in China. We see there's a emergence of Zonga and emergence of Ant Financials who are getting into this space. We see the similar thing in Singapore, Malaysia, and all. So there are, and it is not only these kind of players who are in the industry vertical aggregators, but even ecosystem players. We heard WhatsApp planning to come into the insurer, offering insurance with SBI and all packaging. We see the same thing has been seen a huge scale in China. WeChat offers insurance products at a very significant level. So there are these kind of players. The boundaries of competition are getting blurred, and we can have huge number of examples, and insurers also trying to dabble into this space. Second, what other aspect that is significantly impacting the whole ecosystem change is the technology is really pushing. One of the key reasons for all this advent, we all know, is the new technologies, whether it is you talk it about the digital web technology to start with, but the advent of the intelligence, AI, ML, the cloud ecosystem, the analytics, the blockchain, the digital. So all these are adding a total new different kind of a dimension in terms of the API availability, in terms of the ecosystem. I'll not go deep into that, but I'm just highlighting at a very initial level. But with this core competitive offering changes, technology changes, what it brings to understand is that what is a customer uh, going through. Customer behavior is changing significantly, and that's what we see in this slide, where we used to his people have plotted their behavior. Earlier days, the customer would go to an agent and complete the entire sales journey. Today he would go to one site for doing basic information, some other site for doing compare features, third site for seeking quote, fourth engagement with a bank assurance front end to get a certain different quotes and comparisons, and then finally go to a Facebook or a social media site for reviewing the references, and finally purchase on a completely different in an advisory or a IFA or a broker site. So the whole journey, and it doesn't end over there. The journey further state the sharing of experiences continue post the buying experience, what happened through what documents experiences happened, and post service experiences, whether it is for the claim related aspect, and all this get documented as a review process. So today's buying behavior is completely changed and transformed, and because of the choices that the customer has. Same thing we see the business line wise also. Sorry, business line wise also there are there are so the customer has significantly higher expectations. They said that customer with the COVID kind of a scenario, now the risk perception is much higher, especially in low penetration markets like India, but in very high penetration markets where there are high risks like Japan and Korea, or even other markets where there is a, but the awareness in general in the global market for health, income protection, liability credits, because of all this risk that we have faced, is growing up. So there is undoubtedly the better appreciation. Then comes between lines of business, whether it is individual life, life as well as general. General seems to be more risk prone in terms of and amenable to transaction, because it is more of a standard transaction. So the customer is more seeing that is the adoption of a digital customer directly buying online is much higher. So that's another trend we see. Then other aspects of the customer engagement is not just behaving that it's only at the point of sale and at the point of final claim experience. There is a insurer's experience in terms of a entire life journey during the wellness is which is adding up a new dimension. How does an insurer engage with the insurer with the customer throughout the life journey, whether it is for his using the IoT information. And that's what we have seen in various models like health returns in India. Aditya Birla has launched discovery model in South Africa, the vitality that AI promotes, PruPulse, which is another model that Pru is trying to promote. So the customer engagement behavior is changing. Coming to the distribution, yes, distribution landscape is, we all see, is fragmented, because now their value chain has split. The ownership of customer from the insurer sometimes has gone to aggregators like Policy Bazaars, ePolicy Policy, or even to the point of sale brokers we see in India that has emerged with the Turtle Mint, Renew and all. So the value chain has split significantly, and that is going to only fragment going further. Or even mobile technologies, the Airtels are coming and packaging products, bundle protection products, or even when you buy a tablet or a mobile phone, you get a protection bundled onto that. So there are embedded products that are coming up. There is a trend towards the value chain splitting. So the distribution is getting very completely different. Multi partners getting, somebody is a lead generator, somebody is the one who is fulfilling the journey, and somebody who is going to actually complete the whole journey. So with this, one more trend we saw in the COVID period is about the digital face-to-face, that the customer doesn't always want to engage with the agent in a face-to-face meeting. And that's where a lot of innovation happened in the distribution in terms of how does one engage with the customer. It's not only about a Zoom meeting or a Teams meeting that was sufficient, because in an insurance process, it needed a certain explanation of the product, certain signature, certain declaration which the regulator mandates in many countries to be filled by the customer specifically and not by the agent. So it is not only about sharing on the Zoom screen or on the Teams meeting. So, and also at the same time, a customer is not so comfortable in sharing all the information, whether certain documents to be shared or via email. So how does a digital face-to-face work, which is secured enough, which is comforting? The customer may not want to give his payment details to the agent and enter on his Zoom screen or so. So how does this? So that's where the emergence of a digital face-to-face as a one another important trend that happened. So this is I'm just briefly covering all these aspects. And finally, last but not the least, is the regulation. Regulation trend, if you look at it over the period, has changed. Earlier, the regulators like RDA used to only focus on getting a summary report of their business. But now the trend is towards getting the business in such a way that, okay, it is the information of all the entire analysis in terms of the compliance needs is more of the process transparency. So even the agent, is he mis-selling? Is that agent pushing a wrong product? So the entire process compliance responsibility is shifting to the insurer. And in add to that, the data privacy related dimensions, the data security related dimensions are also added. Though on a positive side, sandboxing is being thought about by many regulators, but that is only for a few and for the initial stages. But the core business still has a large more compliance into the whole thing. So this is the whole background to the whole the context of the insurance landscape, emerging landscape. So undoubtedly, so has a, in a nutshell, disruption is inevitable with the advent of whether we talk about aggregators, we talk about insurtechs like we've seen Plum and Gram Cover coming into this space. We see the P2P, the peer-to-peer insurance, the likes of Lemonade or many other model, even in China, the Xiang Hubao. So those are the models that people have come on kind of a mutual concept with the use of the technology has enabled them. The ecosystem concept, where it is like the likes of Amazons or the WeChats or the WhatsApps will get into, and the embedded insurer space, which is where the likes of the product gets embedded, the insurance service gets embedded in the product itself. And all these models, the disruption is going to be inevitable, and the conventional model of insurance selling will change. So key point is, are the insurers ready for this new age business models? So we just thought on, I'm just sharing a few guiding principles that we understand that an insurer should focus upon. It is not, I'm not going to give a complete solution, but I'm just saying that what guiding principles. So there are 4 points that we really want to highlight, and that 4 point is in the area of adaptability to new age business model. Just give me a minute. Yeah. So the adaptability to the new age business models is one key aspect. So whether are you able to provide and integrate with, whether it is a Policy Bazaar, whether it is in Indonesia market, it's Pasar Police. So are you able to operate? You can't say they are a competition. You have to collaborate and work together. So whether it is an aggregators or whether it is a point of sale partners, or whether it is like the Amazons, Geos, DMarts, where they are selling the products, or whether you will collaborate and create a final offering along with combining with Ola itself for the ride insurance, Uber insurance, or whether it is a journey travel insurance with the Make My Trips, or even a telecom assurance, that is, can you take up accident product along with the protect your product. So there are these models which we are seeing as a emergence, and which is one adaptability that is very critical, that are you ready from an insurance standpoint. Second is the interoperability. So with this adaptability, you have to operate with different types of model, whether it is a hybrid product, if it is an investment bundled, it is a health service that it gets bundled, whether it is you are launching a niche products, or whether you are launching a niche wellness kind of a services as well. So all this packaging is the insurer ready to provide those. And the interoperability, then the packaging would come along with the in terms of whether you are able to integrate with different types of touch points, whether it is for the gateways, whether it is for your the third party information gateways that we are talking about, whether it is like of Experian, the credit bureau checks, the KYC checks, the medical information checks. So are you able to interoperate and provide it, take the information faster and give a experience where you are able to package a product specific for each need? Are you social media? Yes, it is a little additional information, but more important from a completing a process is more towards the IIB, the Indian Insurance Bureau, the CIBIL checks, the Aadhaar information KYC check, the CRIF check, the experience, medical information bureau. We know in various countries, in US as well as Thailand and all, so they are available. Or even picking up the document from the digital. Are you able to operate? Are you able to? So it is not related only to the payment aspect of it. Information is a huge need in insurance to underwrite, to and do the risk assessment, do the document verifications, and finally. So these are the interoperability I'm talking about. These all are needed across all these three dimensions, and all of this need, the expectation is. I'm sorry. It has to be in an agile form. Sorry. Yeah, the expectation is all of this have to be in a very agile manner, because the time needed, most insurers I have seen that they do these processes in a siloed manner. So the time for a next change, for next time you want to add a new policy bazaar equivalent or a new partner for a point of sale, everything takes 3 months, 3 months, 4 months to integrate a new onboard a new partner. So is it configurable? Are you able to create some standard APIs for handshaking with that? Are these available as a service so that it can be integrated with multiple insurers? And how to focus on end-to-end time to market, not just doing an issuance of a policy, but the entire underwriting experience as complete as such. So these are the various dimensions which you say are the four key principles which an insurer need to be ready from a packaging for the distribution end. So how does that happen in this? In our past experience, I've just put at a very high level some three key dimensions. One is that the sales dimension, we'll say the servicing dimension of a customer journey, and finally the performance management of an insurance company. So looking at the sales dimension, just there are various empowerment that an insurance company can be ready with in terms of empowerment and intelligence, whether you have advisory tools which can operate across all your channels, whether it's tied agents, bank assurance brokers, whether the need analysis tools, illustration tools, solvers are there for handling sales objections, whether there are end-to-end application capture with integrated with the third-party gateways, whether there is a lead analytics, whether which product should be sold to which customer, and based upon the propensity models that are available, what is the analytics show that which agent needs what kind of a training, are the right kind of collaterals available to be referred at the particular point of sale when a customer has a question relating to the valuation of the products or sale. And finally, the intelligence in the areas of underwriting. Are you able to only underwrite the clean cases or a standard STP cases, or are you able to give a decisions on the field itself with the rated up cases also? So rather than even after doing the data capture, if it is going to take you 3 days, so what is the digital experience about? You just for data capture, or is it for complete policy issue creation? So that's where that flows have to be intelligently done on top of it. So this is one on the sales side at a very quick. Same thing if you look at the customer delight in terms of the service experience. Are you able to allow the customer to engage and see a view, peep into his entire engagement, whether the multiple policies are there, what all lives are covered into that? Can he add an new top-ups and do an illustration for that? What will happen if the underwriting for that top-up area, the exposure that he's looking at? So the life cycle engagement, it is not just about these, but also today the experience people want. Are you only interested in not paying the claim, or are you interested in my wellness? So are you able to tell me that, okay, what should I do? How do I maintain my life? Or even claims in terms of an automated decisions, not only for the minor, small straight through decisions, but also for a complex decisions as well. So this is on the servicing side, but intelligent performance management is a very uh, very critical aspect in the insurance company's operations, and that's where the key areas comes in, whether how they are able to manage the entire hierarchy of different channels, and the situations are completely different. For agents, it is completely n-tier hierarchy comes in, and there are moments where the promotion happens, demotion happens, transfer happens. And it's not just these movements, the movements also link to the policy. What is the decision on the policy? Because here the policy lasts for nearly 30 years, 50 years. Who handles the servicing aspects? Who helps in the 7 years the commissions are getting paid? So how are the relationship maintained? So the rewarding and performance and the KPIs, because many times we all know that the insurance company makes a loss if the policy lapses or cancels in the first 2 3 years. So how does the rewarding mechanism ensure? There are many regulators in countries like Singapore, Malaysia, who are introducing the balance scorecard model, where you are able to get the persistency also has to be correct. So the ownership is not only on the insurance company, but even on the agents to ensure a right persistency. So certain rewards are linked to long-term persistency of the policies. So the onboarding, how do they really scale up and train the new onboarded agents? Are your compensation? Many CEOs we have interacted, they talk about, I am doing the compensation just because my competitor is doing and just because I want to grow, but I don't know whether it is really working. So are there any tools for us to analyze what would happen if I pay an extra 5%? Is it going to earn me a business worth 10%, or is it going to cost me more and ultimately replace something which was anyway the customer are going to buy after another 2 months? So this kind of analysis is very critical. Then the other aspects is, how do I play a differentiated compensation? Because not everybody delivers the same results. So whether differentiated compensation is like you have MDRT agents. So MDRT agents are delivering huge results. So are you really giving them differentiated compensations and service? So are you able to differentiate on that? So and are you really giving him a commission immediately on a certain type of policies? So that kind of a differentiated capabilities do you have, especially when you get a very good channel partner to work with. And all this is whether you are able to empower them fully, or do they really need to call you at a call center to get this information? So are you made him fully empowered? So these are the key aspects, I would say, in terms of a re-engineering a successful operational distribution and transformation in the sales transformation that an insurance company today is really looking at, and that need to be enabled. So the post-COVID area is critical, not just to launch product faster, but and improve operational efficiencies and new channel partners, but you are ready to be able to package for new business models and collaborate with insurtechs as well, because they will provide you some differentiated capabilities for it all. So yet now, while I covered all the what could be done, there are some key warnings I would like to highlight based on our past experience, the pitfalls that we have seen and experienced in the distribution transformation that the insurance. The key is, I've just noted 5 key of the areas that we pitfalls that we have seen is excessive user interface focus. So to the certain extent that the entire user interface is encoded in such a way that every time you launch a service or a product, you are coding complete end to end. So it is not your organizational capability, it is only skin deep. So you are focusing so much on the cosmetic aspect, but not on. So when I say that you are able to onboard a new partner or a new business model like Ola, Uber comes onto that, and you are able to. Are you able to do that with only with Ola, or if tomorrow if Google comes or Amazon comes, are you able to handshake it in a sequence? So are you building an organizational capability, or it is only the one on journey that you have coded into that? See, and all this comes to the second point on the architecture. Is your organizational architecture, are you ready with all APIs in a universal way? Today, there is a fancy on APIs, but many of these APIs are coded for each engagement, and it doesn't really change an organizational ability to be ready for the digital age. So is the architecture correct? Third is believing that tools will solve the problem. I'm being a technology side, I would like to highlight technology tools are coming with some generalization, but don't believe that everything will be just by operating the tools, the solution will be completely enabled, because the tools also need a lot of orchestration, and in more so in insurance, because of the way every policy, every proposal, we are dealing with a segment of one. So we don't just give a quotation in a universal sense. The quotation is tailored to an illustration to the customer's age, occupation, all those details. When the proposal is submitted, again, that goes to the level of detail where you actually try to give a complete underwriting for that individual, his own medical history, his own financial underwriting, his lifestyle behavior. So as a result of this orchestration needs, we are all in the segment of one business, and considering that this orchestration of the processes, we don't have in insurance, we don't have a standard processes that okay, this product, this process will be a combination. So there are some three processes and all. The process model changes for every partner type, every product type, every customer situation type, and that's where the orchestration is a missing area. And we don't have an orchestration. Even the tools like a process management, rule management has seemed to be get coded for a particular scenario, and that is what I'm not getting too deep into it, but that's what is an experience. Third is technology will solve the problem. Many use cases we see that okay, people say yeah, I implemented AIML for voice transfer, but is it has it changed your organizational capability? Technology needs a lot of preparation. Take a AIML case. AI needs analytics to be strong. Analytics need a data to be large and big enough. So whether you are seeing a sales propensity that a customer of a type A, you would want to buy a particular type of a protection product, you need a huge data, and that data preparation takes a lot of amount of time, and that AI capabilities needs. So rather than focusing on the use cases, if your organizational capability with the enterprise data model and creating using those data models, creating as and using those third party tools and capability, if you are able to use the AI model, that is where it can really work wonders. And it has to be the organization's capability to bring intelligence to learn from every process and improvise, whether it is for underwriting, whether it is for claim fraud patterns, or whether it is for customer sales propensity. So there are huge number of use cases which can be improvised, but doing it in silos, it doesn't really solve the problem. The data becomes a preparation is a very critical. Third area is what we see is the failure point. Fifth area is the agile, wrong use of agile. Agile doesn't fit into all projects, and that is what one needs to understand. Using agile as a universal mechanism is leading to a myopic view in terms of projects, and the projects are getting shorter, and without having a holistic view, because you can't construct a large building by just creating a front facade. You have to have a very good foundation pillars, and that is what one needs to really focus on. Certain projects need to build organizational fundamentals, and that's where certain projects need. But yes, you can bring agile plan. So bring the build the organizational agility should be your focus, and not forcing on agile in all the projects. So these are the key pitfalls that we have seen, which are hurting some of the transformation initiatives as well. So in a finally, the journey that happens is the content, the manage and empower is the stage one. If you look at in a transformation, you have to have the tools, you have to have the KPI capabilities, and all based built on your content. But the analytics and your ability to learn and analyze, it goes improves only when you have the base fundamentals. You can build analytics, and based on those analytics, you can build the intelligence. And so it is a process that you have to go through, and you can't jump. Today it seems that people are looking at AI to help them solve the problems which they have not addressed in the earlier generation. So that is a brief summary before I take into questions. The final success mantra that we'll learn is that the focus has to be on your own business strategy. Business strategy is not universal for all. You all know that better than me. In terms of somebody will have a differentiation strategy, somebody will have a cost strategy, or somebody will have a mixed model. But creating a focused architecture and a right architecture is focusing on the right architecture is very critical, and not just focusing on a technology initiative. So that's a brief that I would like to have in my first initial presentation. I'll be open to any questions.
Wonderful, and thanks, Mangeshji. This is actually what I personally see it is more of a wish list or maybe a bucket list kind of a thing, that has actually been taken through the different slides as such. In fact, Pandey sir, I'll request you to have a set of these slides, and maybe we can have a discussion on this in the class once again with the students, because
सर प्लीज आप
these-
अपना ये पीपीटी
Sure.
बंद कर लीजिए, stop sharing it now so that we can see in the full screen.
Okay, 1 second. Yeah, are you able to see that?
Yeah, sir.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
So I have got few questions referred to
Yeah.
me by my student volunteer from the Facebook page part.
Please. Yeah.
And one question is that at the right time, cryptocurrency and Bitcoin is very much in news, sir.
Yes.
As far as the use of Bitcoin is concerned, I believe that has got a huge scope in insurance. So the first question is, what are the different area where the Bitcoin really can help? And the second question from the student is, what is your take on cryptocurrency? Need not be directly related with insurance, but in general, because this cryptocurrency is in news right now.
True. Okay. So let me address that. Cryptocurrency, see, my view is like this. There is definitely, why should a cryptocurrency be there? Main focus is people feel that they are cheated or they lost a lot of money because of the government manipulation of the currency, because government is managing inefficiently the current currencies that they are having, and they don't want to be like some countries, some markets that are very huge currency failures that have happened. If you look at Indonesia in about 2000 and all, there was a huge depreciation that happened. It is that people want to have an alternative investment so their assets are protected in a currency which is universally available and not manipulated by any specific person, whether it is a government, whether it is in any other manipulation that happens in a currency. Even in a COVID situation, people are printing huge amount of notes and people underlying assets are not changing. But because there is people are giving tolls in terms of subsidies and all, so the value of the currency is going up. So considering that, people are looking at cryptocurrency, which is not managed by any one individual, and it is a environment which is actually uses that as a standard global currency. So that's what is the original thought process. Now, yes, in principle, it is a good idea, good concept, and blockchain is a good technology to leverage that. But the real challenge is today, if you look at it, it is too early and too premature. In that sense, even you take a Bitcoin, how much percentage of the transactions are actually happening on Bitcoin? It is in terms of the percentage, it would be less than 0.1%. In terms of a transaction where it is being used for pay a certain, as a result of which, forget about other cryptocurrencies. So there will be a long way to go before it becomes a prevalent method of exchange. And the bigger concern on crypto is today is that it is being used as a trading platform more than which is more on speculation rather than, it doesn't have any underlying assets. It's the same thing that the people are making losses on a business model, but their valuation is going up with the future projection that people see that, okay, because it will sometime happen in future, but how far is the future? Because unless all the governments agree to have a mode of exchange through cryptocurrencies, and which cryptocurrency will gain a foothold in such a way that its transaction volume underlying as a transaction for that currency goes to such a level, then that is use will be. So according to me, it is a long way to go. Today's fancy for trading is not a right base without underlying value for that exchange for the currency.
Sir, the second question is there. I mean, of course, you people were the very early mover and very daring person to maybe venture out as an individual entrepreneurship. how has this entrepreneurial space has changed over the years? To be very, perhaps the students wish to know how difficult or how easy it is right now to try out for a venture in insurance space.
Okay. See,
Support from the ecosystem, sir. Maybe he's wishing to know.
Yeah.
I mean, how can he get help?
Yeah. See, as we are going further, the ecosystem is much more amenable. I would say,
frankly, it is always better, and tomorrow it will be much more better. So I would say that from our days when we started to today, it is much more better. More because one is the availability of resources. Because we all know that what all resources are needed. Yes, there is a good idea. There is a execution experience that is needed from the team, and then there is a resource which is capital, which is very critical. Today, capital is not a constraint in terms of if for a good idea, for a good experienced team, onto that capital is not a constraint. So that is one of the biggest hurdle that used to be there. So from that front, yes, undoubtedly it is the best time. But in terms of, but the core to it is not just capital. That is because capital is not just going to flow to anybody and everybody. It has to have, you have to have a good idea, and ideas are very easy to copy today. And you, by the time you create an idea, unless it has to be backed with a good execution and a solid fundamental experience of doing that execution. So it is not just an idea. Second is that please understand there are different models. We get fancied. It is known fact that only 2% of the entire businesses actually last beyond 8 or 10 year period kind of a thing. Why does that happen? It is because it needs to be, it is not just an idea that is sufficient, and not because there is a funding and a huge amount of availability of funds that is sufficient. You need to have back it up with a good execution,
Sustainability
model,
part is also
sustainability, and a good experience has to be used. So a right model has to be created.
Prateek sir, you have raised your hand, so you can go ahead with your question.
Actually, I was worried, because these students are coming up with all the relevant questions, and I thought maybe I would be left behind in the race. So therefore, I immediately raised my hand, when lest I missed the chance. Mangeshji, when you were giving your presentations, they were a specific point that you talked about was regarding data privacy and data loss and the kind of things. Now, I personally believe that there are two aspects there. One would be that the data that probably you would be collecting or your clients should be giving to you. So that is one part of data protection. The second part, which is more important, is that when you are actually diagnosing the insurer's system value chain, they would be exposed to your scrutiny in totality. That means their entire business model, their entire data, whatever it is made available to you. How do you ensure that those particular details are protected vis-a-vis the other clients who you may be having?
Yeah, see, in terms of today, there are standard. That's where the regulator's role comes very critical, especially in insurance, because the kind of data that you need to really underwrite a risk, especially when you talk about life and health, because you will get deep into the personal information about the medical history of himself as well as family. It will get deep into the lifestyle patterns. It will get deep into the financial, and these are the critical aspects for any underwriting assessment. Leave apart, I'm not getting into the genetic aspect of people trying to project those dimensions, but I'm saying that at least a pure risk assessment which involves these underwriting dimensions is very critical, and that information. But the regulations today ensure that yes, this data, if it is submitted or it is sought from some third party, you have to seek a permission from the individual that he is willing to allow that data. Like as I was talking about MIB, Medical Information Bureau, or even India is setting up its own health records bureau. So once those detailed, we are still a long way, but I'm saying once those data is available, today technology allows you a control in such a way that only it is applicable with a permission. So the customer who is giving, today we allow Aadhaar, after permission, you allow Aadhaar information to be fetched. The same thing, the KYC information verification happens today, that you can allow the CRIF or the CIBIL records to be fetched onto that with a permission. So there are mechanisms of permission that can be taken, that data can be sought rather than the customer individually going and collecting documents and submitting it. And with that data can be encoded, because data privacy, even you see in Europe and all, you can encrypt it, you can store it, and a certain personal information will not be available. And there are regulators who conduct audit about these activities on a regular basis. So that is available, and these processes can be easily controlled into this context. But it is the core to our business of insurance that certain information is needed to assess the risk, and not just assess the risk, but even to learn for future projections, as well to improvise on the underwriting, mortality rate tables and all. So we'll have to do that.
Rizwan, you had raised the hand. आप क्वेश्चन पूछ सकते हो.
Sir, yes, sir. I raised it, but my question got answered by the sir. My question was the same, just same like Pratik sir. He asked about how safe information with this technology, as most of the companies take our Aadhaar details or KYC, or sometimes we verify our Aadhaar details. That means we give our iris scanner, we give our fingerprints. So how safe is the information? But actually, sir, give that the answer. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
There is another question.
So one more point, one more question is that, like, many of this information, it is not like this information, we also in our softwares, we see this information on our tablets, but it is not that it is available and kept in your gallery, or so somebody can pick it up and the agent can pick it up. It is not like that. So the secured practices are there. It is not only encryption, there is a proper authentication process. Then the data that is available, it is available in the application, which is in the bits stored in the application itself. It is not available as an image or any document in the gallery. So there are processes of encryption that are there, and those can be significantly addressed, not an issue onto that.
Sir, there is a question from another girl, a student. She is asking, it is between technology and manpower. What she is asking, how can we maintain an ideal balance of technology and manpower to stop changing technology?
Ideal balance. So last part I did.
Ideal balance of technology and manpower.
Okay. See, this is an age-old thought that we always thought that every time a technology comes, it will get into replacing human resource. But it has always been found that it has not replaced the human resource. It has only ported us into a better roles and more different kind of a roles. Take, for example, today's biggest debate is about AI/ML, that AI/ML will get into this. Similar thing happened in automation when the engineering first stage of human growth, that engineering and machines started coming in. Today, we talk about the same context on an AI. So my worry is not on the AI/ML in terms of that it will replace human. It will only change the way that humans will be using their role. So it is not will not be used for a mundane or a process related activity or a manual related activity, but there will be a lot of activities that will need a lot of new thinking, new improvisations, new improvements onto that. Yes, undoubtedly, when there is a sudden change or a huge, there will be an immediate short term, there will be a certain impact, but it will only help us. It maybe look at it very positively that all will be free and the machines will do a job for us. So we'll have more time to have fun and enjoy life better at a lower cost. Yeah.
Sir, another question is that I agree with that particular question. And in your presentation, you also talk about artificial, cosmetic part of that.
Mm-hmm.
This cosmetic part is unnecessary, increasing the competition in the insurance market.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, I mean, AI is going to play a huge role in shifting policy from one insurance to another. How can we control it, or how can we improve it further? Persistency is a big issue, sir. And it is happening because now it is very easy for people to shift from one company to another, maybe without having a real, genuine benefit.
True. See, because what happens is that, yes, there is a certain segment. Earlier, manual activity of data entry was considered as a large work. Today, data entry can be automated with an OCR scanner, and that is reducing the amount of data entry work that the insurers used to outsource to for encoding the proposal forms, that they physical forms that is. So that percentage will reduce, but that doesn't mean that the complete job has gone. The job has shifted. In the short term, yes, there will be a reduction in a certain role, but there will be shifting to a better, more opportunities are opening, more types of products will come in, more types of needs are going to come. Today, we never thought about insuring our mobile phones. We never thought about insuring our rides onto that. So there are more risks that our perception will increase, more rights will be protected, as a result of which the roles for the insurers in the newer areas will come up. The newer areas could be to assess things in a physical form, or to collect data, or to analyze data. So there will be more role towards that than towards the physical data entry. Yes, undoubtedly in the short run, the roles will reduce, but in the transformed economy, the services economy will open up new opportunities for new kind of risk that we would want to cover, and those new kind of risk will open up certain areas of assessment, certain areas of new distribution that will open up new jobs.
Sir, embedded insurance is a new buzzword. Everywhere we are talking an entire this digital space, which we see now.
Yes.
It's moving on that only.
Yeah.
But I mean, going by again, maybe we are from the different generation. How sustainable is that practice from financial angle? Because we saw company like Digit starting digital, but subsequently they have started moving in the real business. No? They are now recruiting people and heavily into group insurance. Even Echo is now going heavily in the, maybe they are using the technology, but the bit side and embedded insurance, I don't know how sustainable is that business, at least in Indian context, sir. I'm not sure about the abroad.
No, your point is valid. If you look at it, the trend of the digital as a proportion of the total insurance premium, if you look at it, especially in life, it is very small, which is less than 5%. So in terms of a digital direct assessment, because it is limited to protection and a personal accident product. But in a non-life space, that is growing faster, because in a non-life, it is not only assets of auto and travel that were predominant in terms of a retail space. Now there are more areas that you would want to have assets like your tablets, your laptops, your other digital assets that you would want to protect. Second is that the trend towards that it is not only the digital assets, but even the mindset is that I don't need an insurance throughout. I need it for, I don't need for a travel insurance for my own entire year, but for a certain ride. I am traveling from here to Japan, and for that trip I want to make it more granular. I am doing it at a Ola level, right? So rather than me buying a car, can I take my ride insurance for every ride that I do? I will take an insurance only for the ride rather than taking a universal when I'm not using. So the trend is correct. It is not that the trend. Only thing is expecting that it will change overnight. It will only add to new categories of protection that we'll need for liability insurance, for travel insurance. So those will add up, but it will take a little, it will open up opportunities. But the existing businesses, certain businesses, like a life business or a health business, will need a conventional protection and a model to use technology more better to improvise onto that. So it is not like it is going to just replace, it will add a certain new category of business line, and it will take a little more time than and definitely, but it is a good positive development for the new thought process and new lifestyle that we are getting into.
One interesting question and maybe information for me has come, sir. I will read the entire question.
Yeah.
Sir, is there any possibility that mis-selling in insurance sector is abolished totally? Is it due to the sales pressure or lack of information? Recently, Israel claimed that their insurance policies are totally transparent and there is no scope for mis-selling. Is it possible? What is your take on that? I don't know. This is good information, sir. I don't know where this student has got it.
Yeah. See, in fact, very interesting area that we touched upon in this mis-selling concept, because one of our leading product, we call it Symbiosis Sales Tool. It addresses the entire journey in terms of, and we used to have discussion with various CEOs on this aspect, that and especially chief agency officers, chief distribution officers, who used to at times be uncomfortable to put a lot of regulatory mandatory processes earlier days. But when the regulator started insisting on a certain compliance, risk shifted, because in a paper process, we know many times, it is known very universally that in a paper process, many times agent takes the signature and fills up the form later. And whatever he would counsel the customer to say that, believe that, okay, this is a better product for you, people will go buy that. But today, the insurers are encapsulating a certain recommendation of a particular investment link product only when the certain risk profile of a customer is assessed, and then a particular type of, because the mis-selling is hurting the insurer, mis-selling is hurting the customer more, and in the long run, insurer is losing the customer. So as a result of which, there is now a realization, better realization. The regulators are much more stringently implementing it. So we are moving better towards the control of mis-selling. And with the insurers being made responsible, it has also, with the kind of a digital adoption that has come in, it is no longer only the agent or the customer who is doing a blank signature on the blank form. Today, it has to be the process journey can also be mandated by the system to say that, okay, you have to follow a certain earlier process. You can't do a proposal submission and then generate an illustration just to fulfill a mandatory compliance by RDA. You have to do an illustration that can be controlled through the system if you want to. So we had done those kind of, those are mandatory available from the system, and many countries, even the regulators are verifying whether your system allows you to unnecessarily do it backward and forward. So there can be a process that can be adhered and controlled, but both the distribution fraternity, the customers also need to realize to a certain extent that it is in their interest that they need to follow the process and find out what is the right product, what is the size of the product that is suitable for their affordability capabilities, and then go into doing illustrations, do the permutations and variations of the illustration, and then get into the proposal form and underwriting for his own fitment, rather than doing that what the agent feels right and then land into a problem. So, but we are on the right course. Regulators are much more able to implement that better with the digital use. That is also a side benefit that has come into the picture that we have seen in our 25 plus implementations across 10 countries. We have used that intensively in so many geographies. So over the 8-10 years ago, what we used to say, we had to convince it. Now we don't need to convince it. Now the insurers are asking that process to be controlled in this. So it is a good trend.
Sir, last question from audience, then I will have just last concluding question from myself.
Yeah.
The question is,
Sure.
with the AI and ML getting much more stronger and getting better and better,
Yeah.
how long you see the requirement of underwriters in retail line of business? कब तक underwriter की job सुरक्षित है, sir?
Yeah. See, undoubtedly, AI ML has the biggest application in the space of underwriting, and that's true. But I would not say that it's like completely it will replace. I was giving you the example of how do you go through the process. It is manage and empower, you learn, and then you Kaizen the rules in terms of a continuous improvement, feedback mechanism that happens. But when you say that you are managing a particular rule, that is easy in the conventional system. When you learn, it is the analytics and the AI where it comes very crucially. But in Kaizen, when you try to refine and improvise, it needs a lot of huge amount of data to do that. So it is not like AI ML, you go and check with most insurers. It is not that the AI ML they have been able to implement across the board in all the areas. It has not been practical. So what happens is that, are they able to use the underwriting rules of their data? So a particular insurance company has a certain target segment, a product mix, and based on that data, they have created an AML model. Is that sufficient? No. Then what happens is they go to the reinsurer's data. The reinsurer has a bigger basket of data because they have got it for a particular market for n number of insurance company, and they are able to create a better data model onto that. So their decision making is much more better. So as a result of which, this and it helps in terms of you can leverage on your reinsurers partners decision making capability and give, but not everything needs to be automated. And a large chunk of the initial process of the journey that we saw in underwriting, underwriters were actually used to do the QC check for a document, which you are underutilizing the medical capability or a knowledge or a fraternity for something which could be done for a certain basic verification of whether the documents are in good order, whether the certain right documents have been submitted, or half the time the underwriter would go and to say that, okay, I need this document, this is not clear, this is. So why do you need that? So that kind of a manual task that underwriter used to do. So today the focus of the underwriter will be on actual decisions and learning from the decision patterns that he has taken for the last 6 months or a year, and making that learning decisions a rule for his junior underwriters to operate, or maybe gradually. See, yes, as a percentage it will reduce, but it will not go away completely, because there will always be certain improvisation and learning element that will involve, and we will need. While the uh, another aspect that I see in the underwriting decision making, we have seen, while we have an automation in the rule based engine, many underwriters are still not, or many insurance companies are still not comfortable to give the decision automatically on the field. As a technology, we have the capability that you can set up the rules and you can give the decision on the field itself. But they want the decision to be shared with them so that they can review the pattern of the decision and have a relook at it. So it is that kind of a mindset also holds back. That it will be not that today people have moved from 40-50% to 70-80% automation on STP cases, but non-STP cases, which is the medical cases where there is a medical history, where there is a lifestyle patterns that you are somebody is unique in that. So, or those aspects of financial underwriting risk cases are growing, or new parameters are coming. So those will always need a human person to learn and analyze the pattern and give a new statistical modeling dimensions to the AI engine to feedback, and that will be. But yes, definitely it will reduce. It will not have the same volume of underwriters that will be needed, but the nature of the job of the underwriting will get more to focus towards what underwriting was supposed to do, rather than doing the manual QC and quality and the documentation aspect.
प्रतीक सर, आपने फिर हाथ उठाया है तो क्विकली क्वेश्चन पूछ लीजिए. माय लास्ट क्वेश्चन स्टिल देयर.
It's more of a comment on what Mangesh ji was talking. You see, personally speaking, the role of the underwriter has always been to caution the distribution or the marketing team against picking up anything and everything available in the market. Having said that, sir, don't you think that probably it is the lack of data because of which the insurers are slightly scared of the concept of the machine guiding the entire organization per se, particularly when it comes to health insurance, or maybe even in the commercial lines of insurance, because there are so many parameters, so many factors that maybe 5 years or 10 years down the line, we would be in a position to incorporate and encompass all of them. But as of now, probably we do not have that confidence in the machines so as to guide us, sir.
Yes, you are right. You are absolutely right on that. It is the core point in any AI/ML that we always see, that the availability of the data that is needed. In many use cases, we have so many partners on AI/ML tool makers, and we have so many business applications. But the data that is needed for a pattern to be evolved is very huge. You look at Google. Google uses our capabilities to identify where the signals are there, and it uses so much amount of data. For an underwriting pattern to emerge, that much data, that much scale, that much rules, you need to have a huge data creation and the data across all target segments of entire population onto that. That is one. Second is, one important aspect we tend to forget, that many insurers are looking at AI/ML to bridge the gap between what they have not done earlier in terms of the earlier stage automation. So they are trying to say that, okay, what they were supposed to do is that in terms of creating a proper structured data structure of the existing information, creating a rule-based structure. Intelligence today has this intelligence in technology parlance has two dimensions. One is the rule-based intelligence, and then there is which is expert rule-based intelligence, and second is the artificial data intelligence, which is based on the data analytics. Now, it is not that we just have to do data-based intelligence, because the expert rule-based intelligence will itself give a pattern of what the decisions were taken and what it meant in terms of whether it is for early lapsation propensity, early claim propensity models that we have created. So those models can be used, but you will also need to look at your claim data and to find out onto that what was the actual experience and correlate that over a period, and then improvise your decision, and the rule also you can improve. But after that rule pattern, then you say that, okay, now I have a qualified data, and with that data analytics, I would like to further improvise on those rule decision making. Then it makes sense. But if you say that I don't have a rule-based intelligence to that bus I have missed for the last decade, and now I want to just use the AI to really bridge the gap between my basic to the into that is not correct. So you are trying to jump the gun, miss bus, and you are trying to cover it up, and that's where most of the project failures we see on AI/ML are actually happening. They don't really contribute the value that they can do in other company who has a better rule-based and decision-based models.
Sir, last question from my side, being a faculty. Sir, we have this PGDM insurance course running for last 20 years, and the thrust has always been on the subject matter, principle of insurance, policy terms, condition, benefits, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Of course, technology is changing a lot. In our class, we have a mixed group. Almost 1/3 are from the engineering background, rest 1/3 from maybe coming from humanity. Also, commerce is also a dominant in BBA. What is your, because the majority of the listeners right now are our students only. So what is your suggestion for them for their career? Because right now we are also in the transition phase. Lot many things are coming. Like last year placement, majority of the placement were from the BA profile. I mean, as a old traditional insurance professional, we were little bit apprehensive कि सारे बच्चे तो IT कंपनी ले जा रही है. सर, इनके बच्चों के लिए आपका सर क्या मार्गदर्शन होगा? What tips, career guidance you are, you are proposing for them?
Sure. See, I look at it like this. Things change in our own lifespan. If you look at the future shock author Alvin Toffler, he had mentioned that illiterates of today are not the one who have education or not. It is about, are you able to unlearn and learn things better for future? So that is the reality of our life, that we will have to continuously unlearn and learn new things in life. And for students of today, what most important point I would like to always say is that you should be open-minded to such an extent that in our generation, we used to take decades to shift, or maybe lateral shift or industry shift that we would do. But in your case, it might be a matter of every year or a 2 year, or your job profile may change. So your unlearning capabilities, we've seen in our mobile phone in our generation, we used to operate a mobile phone with with a manual keyboard, with a number keyboard, then went to QWERTY keyboard, then went to touch screen. Now today we are completely on a smartphone, which had to unlearn and learn a simple stuff so many times into that. And the same thing happens in our life in terms of our job profiles, our roles. So even if you're coming from different background, I also came from a completely different background, but more important is that once you are into that, you need to focus on a particular industry. You can specialize, super specialize into that. As you say, you go into insurance, but somebody may go into underwriting space, somebody may go into claim space, somebody may go into technology space, somebody may go into the entire operational or product design or actuarial modeling. You can go. So the opportunities are huge in different dimensions, but how do you take it from here into, are you going into an operational role? Are you getting into a management role into that? Are you getting into a design or a technology role? So technology today, one new the technology, because it's getting as a layer across in all the enterprise, what it does is that it is helping the operations, distribution, sales in all the aspects. So it's a very good point to learn different dimensions at one place. So that way technology, and they become a core provider, and because of the outsourcing trend, they become a provider not only in the technology but even operational improvements, refining. So the reason why people are not possibly looking at an insurance industry career and going more towards technology is that it gives them a flexibility to learn diverse things in a very short period of time. They get to learn in different companies and engage with different projects on a shorter basis. So there is a more learning and more rapid and diversified learning that happens, and which helps them to grow faster. In fact, that was a proposition we give to our the business analysts that join our company also, that you may join into our projects, you may join into our pre-sales, you join into our sales. The value proposition that you get is that we are not working only with the Indian insurance company. We are working with a multiple, we are working today in 10, 11 countries. We are avid part. So now we are becoming global. So when you are talking global, what happens is that today you're working in the new business underwriting process of an Indian insurer. Tomorrow you're working with somebody else in a Singapore insurer. Somebody you are working with a Hong Kong insurer. within 3 years or 2 years, they are so confident that they are able to speak to an underwriter who has worked in the in the customer organization for nearly 18-20 years, and they can talk about with confidence because of the actual practical implementation experience on system as well as process. So as a result of it, their confidence is huge and immense and in a short time, but they have to work hard towards picking up a specialization, building the capability. So once they have done that and they have learned the art of doing that in the first 2-3 years, then in the next, even if they are put into a claims process, they are put into a sales distribution process, they are able to do it in a matter of another year or so. They are experts into that. So that's what in our learning we are seeing. So the young generation is smart enough. They will be able to take it, adapt more quickly, but they need to, what they need to really learn from the older experiences, that they need to go deep. It can't be very skin deep. It has to be, they have to become really experts. They can't just do very superficial and quick short-term measures.
So hope the message is very clear, guys. It can't be, it need to have a good knowledge. Okay, already we have exceeded our time 10 minutes. So Rizwan, it's your time to propose the vote of thanks. जितने कम से कम समय में सर को धन्यवाद दे सकते हो दे दो.
And
Yeah,
thank
Rizwan.
you, sir, for giving this opportunity to me for asking the vote of thanks. It was indeed a great session opportunity for us and learn about how digital technology has disrupted the digital insurance industry. So I talked about various factors like after the post-COVID era, how insurance industry has changed, how digital technology has boosted our insurance industry like AI, ML. And post-COVID era, the most companies are shifting. They are shifting. The policies are making them faster and faster. They launch products faster, and more of this, the insurance industry has been boom, as we see in this. It has been boom from the post-COVID era. So yes, I, on behalf of my college, BIMTech, and my fellow mates, extend a hearty vote of thanks to Mr. Mangesh for sharing with us his valuable valuable findings, words, and opinions today. I also thank Mr. Professor Manoj Kumar Pandey and Pratik Priyadarshi sir for joining with us with this event and making this event as boom. And also my thanks to participants for being there and asking questions and making this event a good event. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks, BIMTech. I'm saying to all the students who joined and all the participants who have been there.